Welcome to Drama-Free Healthy Living with Jess Cording. I'm your host, Jess Cording. I'm a registered dietitian, health coach, and author, and I'm here to help you streamline your wellness routine and establish a sane, more balanced relationship with food and fitness so you can reach your goals without losing your mind. On this podcast, we'll talk about nutrition, exercise, self-care, mindset, and more. I'll be bringing you interviews and expert insight on the topics that matter to your health and wellness. Hi, and welcome back to the Drama-Free Healthy Living podcast. I'm your host, Jess Cording. I'm so grateful that you're joining me today. I'm really excited to share today's episode with you because we're talking about one of my very favorite things to nerd out on, journaling. Shocker, right? I know if you've been with me a while, you heard me talk about journaling quite a bit on this podcast and on social media and in my blog and my courses. So it's a tool that I very strongly believe in. It's such a powerful way to get in touch with your emotions and help you learn how to process them and just learn from them. And today I'm talking with someone who is an expert on understanding and processing your feelings and using journaling as a tool to improve your well-being. So I'm talking tonight with Amber Rae, who is an international best-selling author, speaker, and journaling expert who's on a mission to help people harness the wisdom of their emotions. She's the author of Choose Wonder Over Worry, The Answers Are Within You, and most recently, The Feelings Journal. You can find her writing and illustrations in over 195 countries. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, New York Magazine, Today, Self, Forbes, and Entrepreneur. She's also a keynote speaker and teacher. She's given workshops at brands like Kate Spade, Microsoft, Merrill Lynch, Lululemon, Unilever, TED, among plenty of others. So she's launched through her website and public and social media channels, art movements, global journaling challenges, and life accelerator programs. She's a wealth of knowledge, and I am so delighted to be sharing our conversation with you. We talk a lot about just, how feelings aren't the problem, it's our relationship to them, how our emotions can be wise messengers. We talk about something called the dialogue technique, a really great way to unlock inner wisdom, and just how to begin a journaling practice if this is something that's new to you. So welcome to this episode. I will stop talking and we'll get into it. Hope you enjoy this one. Amber, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to our conversation because I am obsessed with journaling, and it is just one of my favorite tools to use with clients. And it's something I've found incredibly useful in my own life. Like I literally started journaling when I was 9 years old, and I just haven't stopped like 30 years later almost. So, but I'd love to hear a little bit what's your relationship with journaling been like? Was it always something that's part of your life, or did you find your way to it through a specific experience?
Yeah, well, very similar to you. I am obsessed with journaling, and I also got introduced to it as a kid. My mom gave me a journal when I was maybe 6 or 7. And I don't know if it was because I was an only child, but the journal became my best friend and my confidant, and I just loved putting pen to paper. And I'd say this practice really deepened for me in my 20s after I had, checked all the boxes of success in the traditional sense, but felt really devoid of meaning in my life. And I turned back. I actually picked up The Artist's Way and read about Julia Cameron's Active Morning Pages. And that had me return to the page in a deeper way and really kind of confront what felt missing or out of alignment in my life, and really to get curious about my feelings and inner world and life experience. So, I've long been journaling, but I'd say it took a turn in my 20s in terms of depth.
I love that. I read The Artist's Way at 19. And okay. I still remember like that summer and just like going through all the exercises, and like it was just so transformative. It was so special.
So transformative. I mean, it helped me admit truths to myself that I had never admitted. It had me declare I'm an artist. It had a really profound effect. And, I don't know if I would be a writer today if it hadn't have been for the Artist's Way.
Yeah, and for you guys listening, we will link to this book in the show notes. If you haven't checked this out, I don't usually say that something is life changing, but this is definitely a life changing book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lovely. So, okay, so journaling. There are just well, actually, I would love to know a little bit like, how has your journaling practice evolved? Like, what did it look like maybe as you got deeper into it in your 20s and sort of what is it like today?
It's funny. I found one of my early journals that had a lock on it and a key. And when I opened it, it was like, do not disturb. This is my private space. And I was writing about boys I had crushes on and, all of that. It was very
Yeah.
cute to see the early beginnings of the journaling. But, I'd say it evolved because, and this is growing up, the only really safe emotion to feel for me was happy. And I learned that emotions were good or bad. I should feel the good ones and kind of push down or suppress the bad ones. And so by the time I reached my 20s, I felt incredibly disconnected with myself. I went through a breakup and I remember feeling embarrassed that I was hurt and the cocktail and the mix of emotions that I felt coming out of that experience and also kind of climbing a career ladder, but feeling like it wasn't the right place for me. All of these different life experiences were bringing up a lot of emotions that I didn't have the tools to really navigate. And so the page became a place for me to name, to process, to understand, to look at, to get curious about my inner world. And I'd say that, the evolution there was that instead of thinking, oh, my emotions are bad and they're trying to hurt me, I began to realize that, oh, they're trying to get my attention. And when I can journal with them and get curious about them, they actually release their grip and often have insightful wisdom and perspective they're trying to offer me. And so that's, I think, when the journaling really took off for me as this kind of, mirror of my life experience, but also this trusted companion on my journey as I was navigating the ebbs and flows of eventually, leaving a career, starting my own thing, moving across the country, navigating dating, just all of life in at least in my 20s. It was this tool that helped me really get in touch with my knowing and intuition and truest self and path. I had also around this time read Finding Your North Star by Martha Beck. And she talks about your social self and your essential self. And your social self is who you show up to the world as, and your essential self is like who you are truly. And I became obsessed with the idea of how do I actually create a life from my essential self? How do I build a career and design my life according to what is authentic and true rather than what's societally expected? And so this journal became this tool for me to really get in touch with what's really authentic for me, what's an integrity, what's an alignment, and just make sure that I was living in alignment with that true north.
I love that. That is another incredible book. We'll also link to that in the show notes because that's another really great one.
Yeah.
And I hear you. It is so hard sometimes to trying to think of the best way to say this. I mean, just to be just a human dealing with human emotions in the world. It's so interesting because we all experience emotions, and yet there's so much pressure to only feel the right emotions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But
Absolutely.
I love how you talk about how feelings aren't the problem, right? That it's our
Right.
relationship to them. And could you tell our listeners a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, just a bit of context, how I even, I'm now an author who wrote a book called Choose Wonder Over Worry and creating a journal around feelings, my own disconnection with my emotions, and then my ability to get in touch with them on the page led to, me studying and researching and wanting to know everything there was about emotions, because I did see in our society that, most people grew up learning that emotions were good or bad and you should feel the good ones and kind of push away, suppress, or avoid the bad ones, or not be honest about how you really feel. Anyway, there's so many narratives around emotions. But, what I came to realize is that every time I talk to people, they would say to me, like, how do I get rid of my fear? How do I overcome my self-doubt? Or how do I make this anxiety go away? And I realized we were asking the wrong question because our feelings aren't the problem. It's our relationship to them. And when we learn to suppress, shame, master, or try to overcome them, that's not the right relationship. And fear and self-doubt aren't actually the issue. We don't need to overcome those things. We need to learn how to work with them. And I like to think that, emotions are sometimes like a check engine light in your car, and they want your attention. They're like, hey, something's going on here. I need you to check in with me. They're alerting you to an unmet need. And so when we can learn to instead not wrong the fear or wrong the shame or wrong the anxiety, but bring a little bit of like curiosity and compassion and courage of, I wonder why this emotion is here. I wonder what it's trying, to tell me. If we had, when we have, I don't have kids yet, but, nieces, when they're having a tantrum or they're really upset, they're feeling big emotions. It's because there's an unmet need. And so often our inner children inside of us are trying to get our attention in the same way. And so when we can learn to turn toward our emotions, we can really begin to build a healthy, nourishing, and expansive relationship with them.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I love the comparison to emotions trying to get our attention. Almost like it's reminding me of all the inner child stuff my mom used to tell me about when I was a teenager. Just like
Oh, good for
you need
you.
to
Great
tune
mom.
in. I got very lucky. Like my mom, I feel like she did so much work, because she grew up like very traditional Catholic household, where it was all about like keeping things in and down. And in her 30s, she found her way to hypnotherapy
Okay.
and became a certified hypnotherapist, and eventually became a licensed psychotherapist as well. And you know, did so much work in between, with alternative and complementing alternative healing modalities. And so it really, and a lot of it trickled down to me. So I grew up hearing about like the law of attraction and your thoughts become things, and really about, tuning into your inner child. And as a teenager, it was easy to roll my eyes at it sometimes, but the
Right.
older I get, the more I realize what a gift that was to be able to have the vocabulary for those things and to have it be somewhat normalized, to really get used to. Like when I was growing up, if I had a sore throat, she would say, well, that's your throat chakra. Like, what are you trying to say that you can't say? I was like,
I
huh.
love that.
It was great. Like, and I still think like that a little bit. I mean, because that was coming from like a lot of like Louise Hay's work and,
Right.
mind body connection as well. But like, yeah, like our feelings can tell us so much about what's going on. And I like the term that you use for them, wise messengers. I think that is so beautiful and appropriate.
Yeah, yeah, they're always whispering secrets about the unmet needs, the desires, and the contours of our authentic selves. And the question is then, are we listening? Because what I've found and what I've found with all of the people that I've, guided in workshops and speaking and all of that is that when we can learn to listen, to truly hear the messages that they carry, that is how we unlock the door to self-discovery, healing, and inner peace and our personal power. And, I don't think often we're saying, okay, what is this anxiety trying to tell me? What does it want me to know? Or what unmet need might anger be pointing to? Or what might fear be trying to protect me from? And it's that lens of curiosity can add so much clarity, meaning, and depth to our lives.
Oh my gosh, that the whole idea, like I remember for me, it was learning that anxiety was something that was trying to teach you something, or
Yeah,
like that blew my head open. I was like, oh, okay, this I can work with this.
exactly. Exactly.
But I would love to hear. Okay, so let's back up because I want to talk about the feelings journal. Because here I am, like talking to you all about journaling and emotions. But let's talk about your newest book, the Feelings Journal. Like, what was the inspiration for this?
You know, Honestly, I created it because I needed it. So the first version of the journal was something that I created for myself in this process of wanting to unpack, understand, and get to know my emotions. And like you said right there, like what is anxiety trying to tell me? Tell me, how's it trying to help me? The creation of the journal became a place for me to kind of build frameworks for myself. And I then started, kind of sharing what I was learning with friends in small workshops. I would throw it into, I was speaking to corporations, and like Kate Spade was bringing me in for different things. And so I began kind of testing the techniques and was wowed by the difference that they were making for people, and was like, okay, this is interesting. Not only, I guess, other people want to journal with their feelings. And what I discovered in different conversations and research is that people, might want to journal, or they might want to connect with their feelings, but the blank page is daunting, and facing your feelings feels really intimidating. And so, what I had designed was a really intuitive, accessible, and, dare I say, fun way to connect with your emotions. And so, what started as something I created for myself, I realized had the ability to really impact and improve the lives of others. And it's funny, I was just yesterday, this popped up on Instagram, but Rick Rubin was talking about how, I think he says, like, don't create for an audience, think of your audience last. And I love this so much, and it really resonated in my creative process as a writer, as a product creator and a speaker, and all the things that I do. But he said, the audience comes last, and this isn't a way to undermine the audience. It's actually a way to honor them, because the audience wants the best thing that they can get. And if you're trying to create something for someone else, sometimes it can water it down and it'll lack like meaning and depth. But when you make the thing for yourself, and when you put all of yourself into it, it'll actually be the best thing that it can possibly be, and it will benefit the audience even more. And when I heard that, I was like, yes, that was exactly my experience with the feelings journal, because I never sought out to be like, I am going to create a tool that solves this problem for others. I was trying to just create something that, improved my life.
I love that so much. And so many of my favorite books and resources like really came from something like that. It wasn't like the person was like, I am a business owner. I am going to create a tool because there's a need and I want to make money. It was like I needed this thing, and I went deep and I created it. And oh, by the way, it also happens to be helpful for others. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, great, that's exciting.
So for somebody who is like, completely new to the concept of journaling, like didn't like you and I grow up doing it, where might you tell them to start with making it, part of their day-to-day life?
Yeah, I would say start small, because, we don't show up at the gym on day one totally fit. And I like to remember that when journaling, because, you might do the first day and be like, this isn't going very well. I don't know if I like this. I don't know if I'm ever going to do this again. Whatever thoughts come up, it takes time to build our muscles, and journaling is similar, and it can be intimidating to begin. So, and, people will say, I'm like, well, what if I mess up? Or what if my penmanship isn't good? Or what if I make a grammatic mistake? Or what if I open Pandora's box? There are all these like different fears that can prevent you from going to the page, which, by the way, the page of the journal is a great place to address those fears and concerns.
Mhm.
But, I think if you can kind of see the fears, okay, there's resistance here, but, I'm not going to judge my journal. This is a place to learn and be curious. It's a place I don't need to be perfect, and I'm here to just show up and be exactly as I am. And I would, set a timer for 5 minutes and start with a simple question like, what is alive in me today? Or what truth am I needing to hear today? Or what does my intuition want me to know today? Something that is a simple prompt that can just begin the process. And I'd say set the timer and try not to lift your pen. Try to tap into that kind of stream of consciousness space, even if at first it's, I don't know if I like this very much, or if this is going to work for me. Let the editor write itself out on the page, and just write without stopping for the 5 minutes, and see how that goes.
And I think one thing you do a really beautiful job of in the book is really offering some great structure and prompts, and it's just very welcoming. And could you tell our listeners a little bit about what they can find in there?
Sure. So I designed the feelings journal. There's an index, and it's divided between I feel or I want to feel. And so when you open the journal to the index, you can either pick an I feel, which is maybe a challenging emotion that you're feeling. So say a conversation makes you feel angry, or you're feeling anxious about a decision, or you're noticing some envy creeping up, you can actually pick the specific emotion that you're feeling, and it helps you even name and pinpoint, oh, that's what that is. And then you can flip to the emotion specific page, and there will be a message from the emotion. So say you pick anger, there will be a message from anger of why anger is showing up and what it's trying to tell you, with prompts that will help you dive deeper and explore the anger that you're feeling with the hopes of finding clarity and relief. And so you can take those prompts. I've separated the guidebook from the actual journal so that you can pick the prompt and then flip to the journal section and begin to write and work with those prompts. And then the I want to feels are desired states you want to tap into. So let's say you work through anger. Maybe you want to feel calm or present or in flow. Those are a couple of them. You can then flip to that emotion specific page. There's a mantra for each of those. And then again, prompts that you can dive into to explore that state that you can take to the journal to dig in.
Love it. It's also just a gorgeous book. It is just like visually so beautiful. That's really hard to find today. I feel like publishers are trying to cut corners everywhere they can, and book structure, format, style, paper usually is like the first thing to go. And it's just a gorgeous book.
Yeah, I self-published this one. This one I did on my
There you
own.
go.
So I could really make sure the quality of it, not that the publisher, I love my publisher, but I wanted it to be a certain way.
Yeah. That's one of the beautiful things about self-publishing is that you can have that freedom of expression, and you can make it exactly what you want it to be.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And just speaking of like, paper and aesthetics and stuff, I always, do you have any favorite like type of journal? Like, for myself, I love like the little oh God, what is the trim size? It's like not 8.5 by 11, obviously. It's smaller than that. It's but the little moleskin notebooks, and like I have certain pens that I like. I hate gel pens. I only like writing with ballpoint pens. I didn't
Okay.
realize I was so specific until like a few years ago. But do you have any favorite like writing utensils or types of journals or things that you find yourself always reaching for, or do you like to explore and try all different ones?
I've experimented with pens a bit, but I've found myself coming back to my Pilot G2 in the .05. I do not like the .07. And I can use a ballpoint pen too, but there's something about the ink that I love. And journals, I mean, of course, I love my feelings journal and I use it almost every day, but I also love a good moleskin. Sugar paper makes a good blank journal that I enjoy. It's a nice size. Those are a few of my favorite tools.
So yeah, and we'll link to some of these in the notes as well. Beautiful. I don't know. I find that it should feel like there's no like right or wrong, but it should feel like nice to you. It should feel like something you look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. You want, I think in such a digital world, especially, I see my time with my notebook and with my pen as this sacred experience and moment that's just for me. And so having tools that feel beautiful and inviting and, something that feels almost like luxurious and enjoyable is important to my experience.
Mhm. So what are your thoughts about some of the like electronic journaling tools? Because I've been noticing these come up like a lot of for example, a lot of fitness apps are starting to include journaling resources. A lot of major companies are offering app-based journaling. Like, what are your thoughts like for someone who's interested in that? Like, any tips for maybe, how to use those tools effectively or get the most out of them?
I don't have a lot of experience with those tools. I will say that if something is getting you to journal, I love that more than nothing. Though I will say, and neuroscience shows this, that the act of putting pen to paper taps into different parts of your brain and allows you to connect with yourself in a way that, being on an app where there's distractions doesn't allow for. And so I am analog all the way, but I say that knowing that if writing in your notes on your phone or using a journal app is a tool that helps you, then I'd say use the thing that works for you.
Cheers to that. I don't think I would be a good candidate for a journaling app just because the whole point for me of journaling is to get off of my phone and away from screens and like tune
Exactly.
in. I don't know how I could handle, like I get so distracted on the phone. It's terrible. I hate it.
Yeah, and that it's similarly, it's like this is the space for you to get quiet, to tune in, and to put all of our, devices to the side. And I think that's part of what makes it so sacred.
Now, something that I was intrigued by is the dialogue technique. Can you
Mm.
tell us a little bit about that and how it can be a useful tool?
Yeah, absolutely. So the dialogue technique is probably the most transformative tool in my practice, and it's very useful to understand what our emotions are trying to tell us. And it's useful in particular because when we're too close to a feeling or we're too enmeshed with it, it can be difficult to decode its message. And so this practice allows you to create a healthy distance between you and your emotions so that you can really unlock clarity and wisdom on the page. And so the way it works is to bring to mind an emotion that's been challenging for you lately. Have you been feeling some anxiousness or maybe some fear or maybe some anger or maybe some insecurity? Bring to mind if there's an emotion that you've been wrestling with lately. And then the way it works is that you pull out your journal and you write at the top of the page, hey, your name, I'm your blank, whatever the emotion is, and this is what I need you to know. So, for example, hey, Amber, I'm your fear, and this is what I need you to know. And then you act as if you are handing that emotion a microphone and allowing it to speak to you through the page. And this is just so powerful in getting almost like it feels like a different perspective. And I became very interested in parts work and internal family systems, which is the idea that we are not, one being, we contain multitudes. We have all of these different parts of ourselves that sometimes have competing interests. And when we can learn to give our different parts a voice and a seat at the table, we can find greater harmony and peace. And so doing this exercise with our emotion and allowing it to have a voice and a say and an opinion and a point of view and a perspective, again, allowing it to have a seat at the table of our heart allows it to, help us understand why it's showing up and what it needs.
I thank you for mentioning parts that like parts therapy and it's so fascinating. Could you tell listeners a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, parts therapy, it's basically it's I don't know how to describe it from a therapeutic point of view, but I can share my experience of it. My experience is more like, okay, I have an inner perfectionist. Her name is Grace, and she has these, goals. And then I have an inner imposter. I've named him Doc, and I have also my inner intuition and knowing. So there are these like different parts within us that have different goals and motivations. And so when we can get to know, understand, and even dialogue with these parts, we can begin to find more harmony in our lives. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I had a really wacky experience with parts therapy a few years ago, and I won't go down the rabbit hole about it, but it was like I had like this inner critic who her name is Maria. I don't know why that's her
Oh,
name. That's just her name. And I had just a wacky experience maybe a year after that where I connected with somebody who just was a clairvoyant and just was like, is it okay if I tell you some things? And they were like, so who's Maria? Why is she being so mean to you? I was like, whoa, how do you know about Maria? It was just so bizarre. Um,
wild.
like little things like that, keep life interesting. But it was actually a very helpful, that was a very helpful experience because just by sort of examining that, it really helped me, explore like, okay, what are these thoughts and feelings? Like what effect are they having on me? How are they holding me back? Like I didn't need to know if Maria was real or not,
Right.
but just to like have that ability to just think about, okay, so this is how I'm talking to myself, or this is how part
Yeah.
of me is talking to myself, and this is the effect that it's having on me. And that was that was really useful and an unexpected, unexpected experience.
Yeah. When I was writing my first book, Choose Wonder Over Worry, I decided to write it in Bali, and I got to Bali and I, have all of my things. I'm ready to write this book. And I was paralyzed by what if this isn't good enough? And what are people going to think? All of these fears that suddenly came to the surface, my perfectionist, my inner critic, and all these different parts. And so how I ended up structuring the book, which is you meet fear, you meet anxiety, you meet not feeling good enough, you meet all of these basically inner parts, is that I modeled it after the parts that were showing up for me in the process of writing the book.
Love that.
So it ended up being this like wild inside out journey.
Now, I feel like I love the process of writing a book. Marketing books is like terrifying to me, but the writing and like going in, oh, I love it so much.
Yeah, yeah. The marketing is definitely, I feel you. I'm an artist at heart. And so then the part of like, okay, now I have to tell the world about this, less, it's not as easy.
Yeah, I need a lot of hand holding. So speaking of your books, if people want to learn more about your work, connect with you, buy your books, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, hey Amber Rae, Hey Amber Rae, and then amberrae.com will have everything there. There's a link to the journal, a link to the books. You can find everything at that online home.
Wonderful. And we'll be sure to link to all of that in the show notes.
Beautiful.
So, okay, I've so enjoyed our conversation. Thank you for sharing your experience with me, your expertise. I have one last question for you, which is a question I ask everybody, because I just love how many different ways there are to interpret this. And that question is, what does healthy living mean to you today at this moment in time?
Yeah, I love this question. Healthy living means living in tune with my inner compass. It means listening to my body, honoring my natural rhythms, honoring what foods feel nourishing, honoring the activities that feel energizing and draining, and really just that deep practice of listening to and honoring what my body needs and letting that really drive the show.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course.
So thank you so much for being a guest today. I love this conversation. Cannot wait to share it. And for all of you guys who are out there listening on your devices, maybe you're taking a walk, doing the dishes, I don't know, cleaning, stuck in traffic. I hope you found today's episode useful, enjoyable. If you like what you hear, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Do matter, and they help me continue to bring you great guests like today's guest, Amber Rae. As always, guys, have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon. Thank you for listening to Drama Free Healthy Living with Jess Cording. We'll see you next time.